Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Right or Die Show. I am your host, Randi-lee. Today, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Naeema. Now, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button right now. Do it before you forget, um, and enjoy the episode. Welcome, Naeema. How are you today?
I am incredible. I'm so excited to be hanging out and get an opportunity to chat with you this morning.
That's awesome. And I mean, we've already been chatting a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I think this is going to be a good conversation. I feel like we've got some good energy this morning. Tell us about yourself.
I am I am a 50-year-old entrepreneur, and I went back to school when I was 36 with 3 kids, a husband, 2 dogs. I thought it would be a really good idea to go back to graduate school. And I think all the people that were cheering me on were not my real friends. Um, I did not have any idea how difficult it was going to be. I used to, complain when I was in undergrad, like, oh, I don't have any time. I'm so stressed, right? This is before kids, husband, and all the adult responsibilities.
Oh, yeah.
So at 36, when I decided, let me go back to school. And then by 38, I'm in graduate school. And not like the easy, I put that in sort of quotes, but not like PhD graduate school, like 14-hour days for 4 years straight, chiropractic, hanging out with cadavers for an entire year, right? Like
Oh, wow.
incredibly difficult, challenging, like science, every kind of biochem, organic chem, like things that I didn't do well in
Yeah,
undergrad with.
I
And so,
don't do science. So,
yeah.
okay, if you didn't do well in it in undergrad, why go back?
Ah, such a great question. So I wanted to become a chiropractor because at the time, my oldest was 13 and he fell off of a 5-foot cinder block wall. So right about chin level for me, he's playing on this wall and he falls off onto his back, landing onto a concrete sidewalk, and he
Oh,
paralyzes himself. Only I don't know that it's temporary. It's just shock, right? And so
yeah.
we rush him to the emergency room, and it turns out everything is fine. Within a couple of weeks, he's completely back to, his normal 13-year-old, very extroverted self.
So
But
lucky.
yes, but 2 months later, he develops migraines. First they're headaches, and then they're longer headaches, then they're migraines, and they just keep getting worse. And I can't figure out what's going on, how to help him. My background is not at all in anything that, would help me help him. And so I didn't know what to do. And we spent a long time really just sort of at our wits' end and praying for this kid. And when a chiropractor finally introduced herself into my life, I was like, well, she seems like a nice lady. And I was really super excited because we had just relocated to Georgia and I wanted a new friend, and I was really excited, but I didn't know what chiropractors did. And if I really thought about it, I was like, back pain, maybe car accidents. But my kid was having migraines. I never made the connection until one day she was like, listen, you've tried everything else. What would it hurt? Bring him into our office. Let's see if we can help. And
Mhm.
sure enough, they took x-rays, and that top bone was so misaligned, pressing up against his brainstem, that it made complete sense that no drugs, no pharmaceuticals were ever
Yeah.
going to be able to help that we needed to get that hard bone off of that soft nerve tissue. And that's exactly what they did. And he had almost immediate resolution. The migraines never came back. And I was so inspired by that story that I wanted to make it my own life's mission. And I completely changed the trajectory of my career. And I
Wow.
applied to chiropractic school instead, and I got in, and it's now 14 years later. And I'm so grateful that I took the plunge. It was super hard, but
Yeah.
now I have my own practice and I get to do that thing every single day. And that's pretty exciting for
That's
me.
awesome. I love my chiropractor. I go there once a month.
Yay.
And it's just, I actually just went there 2 days ago, Wednesday.
Nice.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yes. Yes. I just left my chiropractor. I get adjusted every Friday morning, and I just left,
Oh,
rushed
nice.
there to get back in my
Oh,
office for this
I'd be
interview.
okay with going every week. I just can't afford it.
Listen, I understand. I love getting adjusted.
Oh, it feels so good. And my kid loves it too. He's
Yes.
15
I was about
and
to
he
ask how
goes,
old. Yep.
yeah, yeah. And so he goes and oh, and so does my husband. Like we all go and it's so relieving. Like my back gets so sore and oh,
Yeah, it's pretty incredible just how much we take for granted that our brain needs to be able to communicate to our body, and it does that via the spinal cord and the nerves, not Wi-Fi, right? And so
yeah, exactly.
when we're hunched over and we're doing, working, writing on the phone, like whatever, driving, whatever the thing is that we do repetitively, we
Yeah.
just don't realize just how much we're affecting how well that our body functions and our health. We don't make that connection, and that's unfortunate
We're
because
brutal to our bodies.
yes, yes. And then when we start undoing that damage by going to see a chiropractor, it's like, holy cow.
Oh yeah. I think I went for the first time. Oh my gosh. It's gotta be at least 10 years ago. At least if I could sit and think about it, but it's gotta be at least 10 years ago. And I remember I met them at like a business conference thing. I was there for work handing out business cards and they were there. And he was like, well, do you want like a free quick assessment? That's what they were showing people. And so we did it. And he's explaining it, whatever. And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna come and see you because my back hurts so bad and whatever. It made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Seriously. So lost my train of thought there.
Well, listen, when you get excited about getting adjusted and how amazing it is, sometimes it happens.
It does. It totally does. Now I'm thinking about I want to go again so bad. Oh,
Yeah.
like I said, my back gets so sore. And actually last night it was sore. So I ended up sleeping on the floor because it felt better on the floor than on my bed.
Yes, absolutely. I have a lot of people, our beds don't support us, our mattresses don't support us the way that we think that they did. And then when you lay on the floor, you're like, what? This is dope. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of sad though that I end up sleeping on the floor. But I told my husband, I'm like, yeah, I think it's time for a new mattress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is, I mean, I think I've had this one like 8 years. So
Which is the exact time. That's when they tell you
yeah.
every
So
8, got to replace it.
oh, there we go. Perfect. I'm gonna tell
Yes.
my husband, I'll be like, a doctor told me.
I was about to say, you tell him doctor's orders.
Yep.
Doctor's
Now
doctor's
I
orders.
can say
You
it.
got to go shopping.
Yep. So let's move on from here. And talk about some mental health stuff.
Yeah.
So what kind of parts in your life or what kind of issues have kind of cropped up for you over the years?
When I was thinking about that question before, I was wondering about like how often has, doubtful thoughts and that self-critical talk entered into my brain. And for me, it goes back as far as I can remember, while never diagnosable as a chronic mental health issue. For
Mhm.
me personally, it certainly has interwoven itself into my life, where I think that procrastination has been a huge side effect. That's like the outcome of that
Okay.
negative self-talk for me. And so I think that that is predominantly the reason why I waited until I was 36 to even start entertaining the idea of, can I really do this? Can I go back to graduate school and be successful? And that negative self-talk for me began at such an early age. And it is the premise of the book I wrote, because I looked completely different than the family that raised me. And I was having a really difficult time understanding that, because nobody in my family was having those conversations. And so I think that when we don't have an opportunity as young people to express those inner thoughts and the inner critic, that it can really take on a life of its own.
Yeah, exactly. Um, that's pretty much how my mom found out is I wrote my first book and talked about all of those dark inner thoughts that I had as a teenager. And my mom reads and goes, I never knew that. It's because we didn't talk about it. It
Yeah.
wasn't at that age, I didn't think it was something that we were allowed to talk about because my mom never talked about it. School never talked about it. It wasn't commonplace. There wasn't really social media. It was in its infancy. It was MSN. All right. For those of you who remember MSN Messenger, that was our social media back then. We didn't have all these things where you could hashtag mental health matters or any of that. It was you could talk to just who you knew.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it wasn't, and when you don't talk about it, when other people around you, the adults in your life don't talk about it, it means that you don't have permission to
Yep.
talk about it. And that's what we have to do. And before the interview started, Naeema, she asked me, why'd I start the show? And I've shared it before on the show, but I'll share it again for any new listeners. The biggest reason was because one night a few years ago, my kid was crying in the middle of the night. Why am I so different? Why doesn't anybody like me? Um, and it came down to anxiety, depression, and that that was the moment that I went, do I not talk about this?
Right.
Am I making the space not a healthy or not a open space? Because I want to make sure that I do, because I have depression and I want him to know that you can have these things and be successful and follow your dreams and do whatever you want. But am I not doing that job as his mom right now? And so I went, how am I gonna do this? And so over the years, I've tried different things, and this is where I've landed, and I love it. And so that is what we need to do. We need to make a safe space for everybody of any age to open up about what it is they're thinking, they're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
So you
that.
say it was a young age. How young would you say?
My earliest memories are between the ages of 3 to 4. I have an older sister, 7 years my senior, and but probably my very first memory is at 3. And I talk about this in my book, where she is calling me ugly and dirty
Oh,
and I'm unwanted and unloved, and I didn't have I didn't have the vocabulary to dispute her words. And what I knew more than anything was that she was right in that I didn't look like anybody in my family. And so I could not then um, convince myself in my heart of hearts that she was 100% wrong, right? And I also didn't understand that my brown skin wasn't dirty. Like when she said, because
mhm.
I know when things get dirty, right? Like we lived on a farm. Dirt is our life.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't understand. And as such a little person, and
Yeah.
because nobody looked like me. So
So
there
okay, you
was,
keep saying nobody looked like you.
yeah.
Why?
So my entire family is white. I was raised in an all-white family. We lived in a very rural community in Randi-lee, Utah. But the people that lived in the town, if you will, because we lived very remotely, but anybody I ever saw was white. Or there were Native Americans from the different reservations that the Randi-lee surrounded. So there are 3
Okay.
different Native American reservations. So it was either white folks or Native Americans, but the Native Americans were completely hated. Like this is 1970. This is post 100 years of protocols for which that the government and sort of collaborated with the churches
Yeah.
to essentially kidnap Native American children and put them in boarding schools, right? That they called them schools to sort of erase and eradicate the Indian problem,
Yeah.
that
We had the
that they,
same problem here in Canada.
right. And so I lived in a very non-diverse town, and my family was all white, and so there was
So were you
no.
adopted?
I was not.
Really?
Yes, I was not. So
That is, that would make it to me, I'm just guessing how I might feel. Um, Extra difficult because why are you so different than everybody else, right? Like, because like I said, I were you adopted? It's a valid question when you say, everybody else was white and you have the brown skin and where did this come from?
yeah,
So yeah, that to me would make it harder to internalize. And when your sister said you're ugly and you're talking about dirt and stuff, I totally get how such a young little kid would internalize that as you must be true because dirt is brown, it makes things dirty, and I came out different than all of you.
yes,
Oh, that would be so hard.
absolutely. And I'm in the middle. My younger brother and my older sister are both blonde haired, blue eyed. Like I think
Wow.
my brother has green eyes now, but he started out blue. And my mom had brown hair, but her skin was very white. And so I just could not place it. And nobody was talking about it. Nobody. It was outside of my sister's bullying and just terrorism of me. Nobody else would talk about it. No one would give words to it, would speak to it. My brother's father is on my birth certificate, who is also a white man with blonde hair and green eyes. And so it just didn't compute, but no one would talk about it. And hence the title of my book, Raised as a Lie, because there
Yeah.
was, family secrets run very, very deep. And people hold them very, jealously guarded to their chest where they won't reveal.
Mhm.
And my family wasn't willing to speak about it.
Wow. I'm just thinking of, 3, 4 years. So my grandson, he's 2, right? So he's almost at that age, that 3, 4. And I couldn't imagine somebody saying that to him. Like, grandma would take care of them.
I love that. That is exactly right. Yes. I think that had my mother known what my sister was doing, she would have put a stop to it.
Okay, well, that's good.
Never, I never could bring myself to say it out loud. Like, and
Mhm.
she did such a great job of sort of, in the eyes of the adults, like when she knew that
Mm,
he was watching, right? I mean, think that
yeah,
that's so bullies thrive, is, in the shadows.
yeah,
And I think that shame also lives in the dark, right? That's why it is able to survive. And it's
yeah,
when you shine a light on things, when you bring awareness to things, is much like, when you said about your son, when you bring awareness to things, then change comes. But I was
yeah.
just too young, and I idolized my sister. I wanted to be just like
Oh,
her. I just did not, I wanted her to like me. So
yeah,
instead of telling somebody, because then that would have assumed something was wrong, and I didn't,
yes.
I made myself wrong. I internalized that.
Oh, that's hard. So as you're growing up, you have this internalization, and nobody else in your town is looking like you. So again, more internalization of something being wrong. When did you finally realize that that was all a lie?
I just before I turned 18, we had moved to a really small town in Arizona. So we moved from Utah to Southern California, and we lived there. And I went to, all white schools, but it wasn't like in Utah, I didn't even know what a Black person was, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
In Southern California. And again, to sort of reiterate, the reason we saw no diversity is because it was a town that today, literally, its population is 322 people. So
Wow, okay.
70, right? It was, probably no different. So the size of the town, and so in Southern California, of course, I saw different people, but again, different ethnicities. But that wasn't my community. It wasn't in wasn't in my home. It wasn't in my neighborhood, and it certainly wasn't in my schools or the churches we attended. So having said all of that, we now moved to this really small town in Arizona. And it's this first time that I have been in a really small town since Utah. And so while I've lived in, a small town before, and we moved around a lot, even in Southern California, I was used to being the new kid, right? Like this is my third high school.
Oh, wow.
So I already, I know what that feels like. And I'm used to being unpopular because I don't look like the rest of the kids. While my hair is in braids now, I have really thick curly hair, right?
Okay.
And nobody in my family has curly hair, right? So I don't look like anybody
Yeah.
around me. But it's just sort of become my norm, right? And so here I am in this new school, very non-diverse, and three of the football players corner me in a cafeteria a couple months, maybe second month in after we've moved. Again, it's my senior year, and I am terrified because they're big and I don't understand what is happening.
Yeah.
And they threatened to take me out to a place where they would go and hang out. So the high school kids would go out. It was in a desert. So they go way far out in the sand dunes when there was nothing around but desert for miles in every direction. And they would make these ginormous bonfires and go out there and drink and, hang out and do whatever and just be stupid. Just, high school.
Teenager dumbness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just ridiculousness. And they were threatening to take me out to their hangout and lynch me. Only I didn't know what lynching meant.
Are you effing kidding me?
No. And I was, while I didn't know what it meant, I was smart enough to know that I was terrified. And
Yeah. You knew it was bad.
Yep. And I went home, and there was only one person that I thought that I could even ask, because who do I even talk to about this? And so I called my sister. My sister no longer lived with us. And while we didn't have a great relationship, it wasn't the same awfulness as when I was younger and she lived at home. And so I called her and I was like, don't tell mom. And then I spend, time I retell her the story. And my sister, who's got a very sharp silver tongue, she doesn't say anything. And I'm like, what? Like, I didn't even get the answers from her. And she ended up saying, I gotta go. And she gets off of the phone with me. And then the next day I get summoned to my mom's room, and she has to tell me at that point, like she has to reveal the man on my birth certificate is not my father. And I talk a lot about, what that experience was like at almost 18, finding out that my entire life has been a lie, and, what that looked like and how then that I unravel that.
Wow. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how kids, because at 17, you're still a kid, how
Yes.
kids can say something like that. And I believe that they meant it. Like, I don't
Yes.
even know them, but knowing the era that it was set in and the circumstances or whatever, I believe that it would have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. He was absolutely serious. The
That's, oh my God,
biggest
that's,
of the goons, I lovingly refer to them as, he said, we're going to take you out there and we'll show you what we do to nigger girls. And I was like, what? And I remember thinking, well, you're an idiot because I'm not even Black. I didn't say that. I knew that I was different, mind you, but I didn't know. There was nobody in my family that was willing to have a conversation with me, even though I had asked, right? I had asked over the years, and my mother had shut me down. So I just
true.
thought,
In your mind, you were white like everybody else in your family, because even your birth certificate had your white dad who, was your dad.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And so, yeah, so kids are, as we know, they just
Kids are assholes.
they have zero filter. They just say, whatever it is that they believe is
But they've
worthy
been taught to believe.
utilizing. Yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
think it's important that we recognize that these are taught behaviors. We don't
100%.
come out of the womb and go, you know what? I don't like that person because of the way they look. No, these are learned behaviors. They are taught to you from a young age that kind of person or the way that person looks is bad or wrong. I consider myself very lucky that I grew up in a decently sized city. So 200,000 people, like pretty good size. And so there was some diversity in my elementary school. We had, I don't know if we had a black kid, but there was brown skin. I remember that. Um, most obviously 90% were white, but there was some other colors in there. We were also lucky because in my school we had a class of deaf kids. So we had to learn to interact with them. We had a special needs class, so we learned how to interact with them. So there was a lot more diversity there. And then my godmother, she is black. And so it was just normal in my house because she's been my mom's best friend since before I was born. They've been best friends since high school. So to
Nice.
me, it was just normal. Like I call her my other mom. Sometimes it's funny. She'll joke. She'll say that my mom was just the luggage, but she's
Yeah.
my real mom, right? So, and I have a lot of her tendencies. Like when I do stuff like that, that's all my Auntie Tracy. Right? That's all her. She had a very big part in raising me. So I was very lucky that I grew up with a diverse family because I had her and her side of the family too. And Nana, like her mom, I call her Nana. And she's passed away now, but she was family. And so I was lucky in that way. So when I hear people say stuff like that, and I've seen stories more local to me now, and I've heard local people talk about it in like mean ways like that. And I'm like, because of how I grew up, and again, it's perspective, it's what your normal is.
Yep.
I never thought people could be so mean.
Yeah.
Just because of the way somebody looked, because in my house, it was normal that people look different.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. But
Yes.
it was
And I think
shocking
that
to
that's
me.
how we change things,
Yeah.
is that we normalize differences and
Yeah.
we don't try to silence them by saying, things that were super popular in maybe the 80s and 90s, is, I'm colorblind. Don't be blind
Yeah.
to differences. How about appreciate and love people for
Yeah.
how we are an eclectic group that all
Right.
resides on this planet, right? Like,
Yeah.
see me, don't be blind to me, because when you cannot see me and you cannot appreciate, and you certainly cannot love me, and you
Yeah.
cannot protect me, and you don't see me in you.
Mhm.
And when that happens, the divergence allows and gives opportunity and breeds this apathy. So when something happens negatively and somebody is victimized and or oppressed, we turn a blind eye. We don't recognize it as what it is, and that's racism, and that is oppression, and that's how it becomes chronic and institutionalized, and where we don't see it for what it is, and it's systemic. Instead, I think embracing and looking at one another and finding the ways in which that we are the same, for finding the ways in which that we both can appreciate our own dreams and our goals and what we want for our families and for ourselves. Maya Angelou is quoted as saying, "We are far more alike than we are different." And that truly is, I think, the greatest way that we can honor one another is connecting, right, through our stories, which is so dope,
Yeah.
to be talking about this, and talking with you now from a perspective of being, a published author, because that wasn't ever anything that I saw for myself.
Yeah.
But now being in this space of storytelling, that's the thing that I'm most excited about being an author, is that I get to connect with other people and hear their stories. Hearing your stories, like, that enriches my life, and it
I love it.
enables me to go out and through the world, and I'm going to think of you and remember you and your story and your son, right? And you're going to remember mine. And I love that.
Yeah, this is probably one. I mean, I love all of my interviews, but this is one of the most um, heartfelt ones just because of this conversation that we're having that is so eye-opening. Because, like I said, I was raised and it was just normal. So it took me a long time to realize that some people are assholes. Um, for lack of a better term, you're an asshole. And then to hear your side of it, where you were raised with nobody else that looked like you, it's really putting into perspective. I love the word perspective because that's really all life is about the way different ways that we can look, and we can always change the way we look at things. And that is key to bringing light to these issues, is that we can change. So just like you said, just because something was popular in 70s, 80s, 90s, doesn't matter. And when I say 90s, oh my gosh, that makes me feel so old, because like I go, oh yeah, the 90s. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in 2022.
Yeah,
But
my youngest is 18 and he is in college, and he said they were planning a 2000s party. And I was like, what? You're planning a what? Like, is that a thing?
oh my
That's not a
gosh.
thing. That can't be a thing. I was like, what was even happening in the 2000s? And then he describes it, and I was like, that's a thing. That was 22 years ago. Oh, okay.
And I remember in the 90s, we'd plan school dances to be like in the 70s. Throwback.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
my generation is the
You're
throwback.
the throwback. How crazy is that?
I don't think I like you anymore. I thought I liked you, but now I'm not so sure if I like you.
I know, right? Now it's over. It's over.
That's it. We're done.
Cut.
All right. So, oh my gosh, I feel so old. All right. So, and I mean, I'm a grandma, so even just calling myself that, I feel old, but like,
yeah.
Thinking about the 90s, that's what really does it for me.
Yes.
So okay, how did this conversation go with your mom?
So she has this sort of lead up where she is struggling to actually utter the words. And when it finally comes out, so it feels like forever, because those moments are always, they sort of slow down and time stands still. And I talk about in the book hearing our grandfather clock down the hall chiming, and I'm like, is it chiming again, or has time literally like stopped? And it just sort of feels very surreal. And when she utters the words, those, and they have them now, I was going to say when the movie camera pans around, but now the cameras you see a lot, like when people will go out to parties where they all stand in a little circle and the camera spins around.
Yes.
Yes. So it was one of those moments where I felt like the camera was just spinning all around, like it felt like a movie moment. And I remember saying, did she just, and it all comes out as every word is a sentence.
Yeah.
Did she just say I'm Black? And then there's just this silence that happens in my mind where there's no thought, there's no emotion. It's just complete numbness. And because I didn't know what that meant and what that looked like. Because in addition, what I have not shared is that my mother's family is Italian, and they're like low-key racist. And so it was nothing to hear my grandfather tell a racist joke or have his friends over and tell a racist, like that was just part of my growing up experience. And so I think for any ethnicity, as long as they believe that they are not the lowest rung, then to shit on somebody else that you deem lower than yourself on this sort of, ethnic totem pole is something that, we learn in, elementary school, that to make yourself feel better, you got to make somebody else feel bad.
Yeah.
I just
again another learned behavior.
Yes. And I just didn't know what did that mean, me being Black? Like, what would that change? And I spent a long time trying to figure out how to put those two sides of my brain together. And so ultimately I ended up living two very separate lives for years before I could sort of merge the two in my world. And it really was because I was, going off to college. And so I have a chapter in my book that if the book had titles, it would be Becoming Super Black, because I went the complete opposite side. Like I got big dookie braids in my hair, a ring in my nose, joined the new Black Panther Party, was like down with Whitey, Black Power, the whole nine. I became super Black. And
But you went your whole life being told you weren't. So
yes,
it kind of
yes.
makes sense that you wanted to embrace that part of yourself and know what the heck it meant.
Yes, and that's exactly what I did. And the autobiography of Malcolm X was my Bible. Like it was a very, very interesting time. So it took a long time to sort of merge those worlds and, figure out like how to be in the world and show up. And I didn't write the book until I was 49. So, it's been a really interesting journey.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Wow, I couldn't even imagine what that would be like to just this part of you that we've been blatantly hiding it. We've been intentionally hiding it.
Yeah.
And how you said your grandparents were low key racist, I'm like, the first thought that went into my head was, well, no wonder your mom hid it.
Yes, absolutely.
And not that gives her any sort of permission to have done so, or that it was the right thing to do. I can't make those assumptions or decisions, but I understand why she would do it.
Yeah.
And again, it's a learned behavior.
Becoming mom myself is when I think I met my mother. That's when I understood her walk and I could appreciate the decisions that she made, because I knew in her heart that she was doing everything that she could to protect me.
Yeah.
And that was just her way. And then when I was old enough to have the conversation, she could not embrace that as a possibility until her child's life was being threatened.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I think that she, just like we all, go into a space of we're just dealing with things as they are. My mom's life was pretty challenged, and she had to work really, really hard for everything that we ever had. And so there really did come a time that I found just a complete peace around her decisions. And
that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that that's the greatest gift I think that we can give others around us is grace, right?
Yeah.
Walk a mile in somebody else's shoes and you still don't even have a clue as to what truly it is to be them. And so I just gave her grace. I loved my mother immensely, and I know that she did the same, and she did the best that she could with what she had and what she knew at the time that she needed.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. And I think it's so important how you worded that. She did the best she could with what she had at the time. And I think that as a society as a whole needs to be recognized, that we are doing what we know is best at this time. But as new information comes, right? And I'm going to go back, you mentioned the 70s, the 80s. If you look back at that time, people in the 70s were a certain way, or even if you go as far back as like the 40s, right? People at that time were a certain way. But that doesn't mean that just because you were born in a certain era, you have this overarching excuse. Oh, well, it's because you're from the 70s. It's because you're from the 80s. Right. No, it means that you have a longer journey to change, and you might have more information that you need to gather in order to change, but it doesn't mean that you can't change.
100%. I agree that we still all have a responsibility to evolve, right? And
we're like Pokemon.
Yes. I love that. Yes.
Yeah, we're like Pokemon. Yeah, we can all learn how to be better people.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to. I don't have to say a specific thing. I mean, the show is about mental health, so maybe I'll specifically mention we can end the stigma of mental health. But as we're talking, if you come up against somebody who is racist, don't stay silent. If you, for us, um, me and my kid, we both have autism. So when I hear something, and his is a little more obvious than mine, but I've had people, give dirty looks in the store if he's having a meltdown or say things about it. And that is not an opportunity to get mad, even though I definitely get mad. That is my opportunity to educate and try to change perspectives. And
Yeah.
that's what this show is about. That's what talking to every guest is about. And I think that's what your book is about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I think that the themes of identity and worthiness and believing that you are enough exactly as you are things that it took me a long time to come to appreciate within myself. And when I look in the mirror, that worthiness is an inside job, right? And that took a long time to understand that me seeking that externally was never going to fulfill an internal need. And we show up in situations hoping to find something, but the truth is that we needed to bring it with us. Like, we're looking for love when all along we are love, right? We're looking for light in others, but we are the light, right? Like, show up as the thing that you're seeking. Recognize that you are already it. And we certainly are socialized out of it. I believe that babies come here knowing all the things. They are complete, exact, perfect. They do not question themselves or their actions or their abilities or inabilities. They do them, right?
Yeah.
And until we socialize it out of kids. And
Yeah.
then we sort of have to find the space for which that we emerge, we peel back the layers of the onion, so Shrek says about ogres, and that we remove the veils and we come to ourselves, right? We come to know ourselves once again as all the things that we were ever meant to be. And it's perfection, walking around in this human body, having these very human experiences. And for me, that therapy, that coming to know that truly internally was the process of writing the book. And I'm really grateful for every Friday afternoon's therapy sessions to get to the book. I would not have completed it if it wasn't for my therapist. And thank God for him.
Yeah, that is so beautifully said. So, on that note, obviously, you just said that you've gone to therapy, but what coping strategies have you used?
It is 100% therapy, 100%. Every single Friday for nearly a year, I spent in my therapist's office, and not simply a one-sided event, meaning that it wasn't just me talking over things. It was truly him listening and then teaching. And me, things like my background is in science. I understand diagnoses. I understand the process of doing a thorough exam. And so because I am so very left-brained in that way, I could appreciate when we talked about the different parts of the brain, and understanding that when your amygdala, your emotional brain, gets hijacked, or hijacks your executive brain, the frontal cortex, cortex that allows for us to do all the executive functioning things. And when that gets hijacked and we become so immersed in the emotion of whatever that moment brings, that there are tools that we can utilize to bring our prefrontal cortex back online, so to speak, and that
Yeah.
we can see the importance of finding those tools, right, and then getting them back online. So for me, it was the Friday afternoons, spending that quality time in therapy. And every time I would write a chapter and deal with some awful memory or situation that I had, covered up, then we would have to dig in it. And there were days that I was like a toddler. I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And he would wake me out, and then he would gently say, whenever you're ready, Naeema, I'm here. Whenever you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated, because I also think the importance of finding a really great therapist, like not just a therapist, but one that your energy matches, that you can actually truly hear. Right?
Yes.
Because you can't hear what it is that they're sharing, because for whatever reason, you don't respect them, you don't like whatever, you don't believe in their skills, whatever the thing is, then that's not a good fit. You have to find the one that's a good fit for you. And that doesn't mean that it has to be a talk therapy, such like, I was probably from acupuncture to Reiki therapy to
chiropractor.
Definitely chiropractic. I massage therapy. I went to, I can't tell you, card readers, spiritual healers. Like I was doing all the things because I took my mental and emotional health on as a project. And I was very serious about wanting to get healthy once and for all. And I just wasn't willing to not deal with the things in my childhood. I recognized that part of my inner child was making decisions for my 49-year-old self, and that just was no longer okay. So for me, the tools were all things therapy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, my therapist helped me learn a lot of different things to do, and I still carry them with me. They're still so important for me to remember and use and go back to, especially when I'm in like a crazy emotional state. I'm like, okay, wait, what would my therapist tell me? Okay. So that's awesome.
Love it.
All right. So this book, tell us about it. Tell us where we get it. We know your story now, so we need to get our hands on it.
Yes. The book is titled Raised as a Lie.
I love that title. I love it, especially knowing your story now. You could not have picked a better title.
Yeah, when it came to me, I was like, and people were like, "Don't you want to change it?" No, I don't.
No, it's perfect. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I was actually really, really excited about it. And you can actually purchase it where all books are sold, but certainly you can go directly to raisedasalie.com and you can purchase the assigned autographed book. I can't believe I'm saying that. That's so exciting.
It's very cool. I know. I love when I'm like, do you want me to sign this for you?
Yes. So you can purchase the book there, and it's definitely my fifth baby. I have 3 children I birthed. I am sitting currently in my 4th baby, which is my chiropractic practice.
Yeah.
And Raised as a Lie is my 5th baby. And so that it's been an amazing journey to birth that. And I'm really excited, and I'm more excited about being able to connect with other people and their family stories, and helping those conversations and dialogues around like, how do we improve and our own self-worth and identity, and hopefully it peels back some of the, the veils of what it looks like to be on the side of a Black woman's perspective, moving and navigating, through the world. And I hope that it opens doors for conversations to begin, because I think that that's where it all begins, where people connect.
Yeah, I think it definitely will. I mean, it definitely opened up our conversation.
Yes.
Right. So I think it definitely is going to do exactly what it is that you plan for it to do.
Yay. Yay.
And where do people find and follow you?
I live on Instagram. So Dr. Naeema Writes. So DrNaeemawrites on Instagram, Dr. Naeema Writes. And that's the author page. And you can get the link to Raised as a Lie and buy the book and just see some of the happenings. So this is what I'm most excited about. It is so, so cool. So I'm incredibly grateful and just beyond filled with this emotion of holy cow. They're just the team around me has been so incredibly supportive. And if it wasn't for, my editors and really walking me through the process, it would have never come to fruition. And I think that that's, you asked earlier about tools. For me, it's surrounding yourself with a really, really good tribe. And the people who love and support and will cheerlead and come pick you up off of the floor when you have fallen down,
Yes.
but to just coddle you, to pick you up, dust you off, remind you who it is that you are and why you are here, and then push you right back out onto your path, I think is the greatest thing that that your tribe can give to you. And so I have that in spades. So I'm really, really grateful for it.
That is amazing. I love hearing that. And that is the perfect way to end this episode. So thank you so very much for coming on the show and sharing. It was amazing. And I'm so excited that you get to hold your baby next week.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. What an honor it has been. Thank you very much for having me. And I loved this conversation.
Again, thank you, Naeema, for sharing your story with us. It was amazing to get to know you. You've got such good energy. I love the vibes coming off of you. And as well, remember those links to follow her and get a copy of that book, which is very cool. And I love that you finally have your own copy of it. Those links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check them out. Give her a follow. We have to support all of our amazing guests here on the show. If you do want to support the show, we do have our Patreon page where you can go over and subscribe for as little as a coffee a month. If you're Starbucks coffee, anyways. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly.